Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, can at times contain adult language and themes. It is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Digital Dissection Podcast, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties, creators, and topics. We are your humble hosts, Joe and Mark, two pop culture nerds dedicated to telling entertainment history before it's forgotten too soon. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog for more information on the show. We also love to hear from you, so why not write us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to dissecting. For those of you tuning in on YouTube, because, you've got to move the rabbit ears around and turn the dial on the YouTube to find us here. You've tuned in. We now have our pictures. Our faces are here wonderfully for the first time. Welcome to my home and to Mark's dissection void.
This is dissection void. Yeah, this is just me. I'm trapped. I'm trapped. Case of emotion.
Perpetually in a podcast.
All right. Well, let's see here. Oh, we're actually recording now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Twice.
Okay. Well,
for posterity.
Today we are back to continue following the format of this season, which is going from interview to retro review to movies and back to TV. Which brings us,
it's a good pattern. I like it.
Yeah,
a little bit of everything.
It's a little more organized. We've taken ourselves slightly more seriously in season 2. We're going to do this a little while.
We are trying in the interest of acquiring more viewers and perhaps even one day profit.
Yeah. No one really explains to you how to do that. You just kind of have to figure it out as you go.
You go along and you hope you're doing a good job, and we hope we're still young and sexy enough for someone to pick up.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who have listened to this program since the beginning, at one point in time, we did actually have ads on the show,
we did.
Which everyone absolutely hated. We get a lot of hate mail for that, but that's okay.
That we did, and those ads are gone. Hopefully never to return. But in the event that we actually get to keep our money that it says we're acquiring from the ads, but they didn't actually get, they may come back. But hopefully there'll be sweet ads where we get to record them ourselves in the midst of recording, and not annoying. Hooray, we made this with the website that's publishing us.
Yep. Yes, sir. Now that we've gotten that business out of the way, we are heading towards our TV focus for this week.
Yes.
And we couldn't think of a better way than to, oddly enough, focus on a show very similar to Seinfeld, which we covered last month as our TV choice of the month. And we're picking It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes, another irreverent show, seemingly about nothing, but instead of friends in New York, living in New York life and just kind of figuring out that they're not really adults because of their terrible dating habits. We are also with another group of people who really, in the most sense, are not adults. They're perpetually in college without actually any real education behind them. The characters, anyway, not the performers. And they just are, Philly through and through.
Yeah.
Drinking and owning a bar.
Which is kind of refreshing in a way, because so many of these sitcoms, like you mentioned, they take place in these bigger cities, or they get away from the flyover country that you and I proudly live in.
This is true.
Yeah. So it is nice to have a slightly different setting, home of Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
But one thing about this show that I appreciate quite a bit is the longevity, because Joe, I was just coming out of high school when this show premiered.
I know. It just keeps going. And I'm honestly surprised each time I see that it's coming back for a new season, and not because I think the content's ever getting bad. It's just because, you are the Grey's Anatomy of the sitcom world, and how you just seem to be eternal, Sunny. So it's just always and again, it's always from what I hear from people who work in the industry, and by I hear them, I'm not talking to them personally. I'm listening to them in other podcasts. Getting a show to go like 5 seasons
Yeah.
is a hell of an accomplishment. Let alone what are they on like 17, 18 right now?
They're actually signed through 18 seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, like
So
that is like insane, an absolute insane number to reach in television.
wait, you just said that you don't actually hear this from people in the industry, but technically we have heard it from people
It's
in the
true.
industry because we've
Mhm.
because we've been talking to actors that are in these
Mhm.
movies and in these shows, and
It's
so
true. I guess
they
what I
have told
should
us
have
these
said
things.
is that I don't talk to these people outside of the podcast. I'm
Yeah.
not hanging out with celebrities.
It's very
This isn't
true. Yeah.
I'm hanging out with children because I'm a teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
These are the people I talk to the most.
Oh,
And
yes.
clearly they have no idea how TV works. Most of them don't even know TV's around. They just, they watch YouTube and they go for
Well,
like content like that.
to kinda go back to the longevity of the show, there are some things that I thought would be a funny way to kinda kick this off because back when It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia came out, there were a few shows on FX, which was
Mhm.
really the only network that I think was a suitable home for this show. But that would have included some legendary shows like The Shield, Nip Tuck,
Mhm.
and Rescue Me. And I remember back in the day when these were on TV, and It's Always Sunny obviously outlasted these shows.
Yeah.
Um, Not because of the fact that these shows weren't high quality. I think Nip Tuck kind of fell off a little bit towards the end.
I think so, but
Um,
when honestly, I think when they moved from, Hollywood to Miami, is when we went from LA to Miami is when the show started dipping, and then
yeah,
it dipped even further, I think the season after that happened, and I know that's where I fell off.
yeah, yeah, and I didn't. I fell off long before that, but
Mhm.
that's what was on TV when the show began. Now we'll go through the exercise of what did it outlast on FX, because there's quite a few shows that, either it was around when it came out or came out after and didn't manage to survive. So really
Mhm.
quick, we're just gonna rattle these off though, and Joe, I don't even recognize half of these.
I don't
But
either, like, looking through these, and, like, looking at, like, at least I would say at least, like, 2 or 3 of them. Like, I really liked those shows. They were good shows, and at least one of them, like, I think actually went, like, start to end exactly how, like, the writers intended it to be, so it was never meant to be longer than it was. But
yeah.
still, a testament that Sunny is still going longer than that.
Oh, yeah, totally,
Mhm.
we'll just rattle some of these off for you, though. So some of the shows that didn't outlast It's Always Sunny were Over There,
Never
Thief,
heard of that one. Mhm.
Dirt, The Riches,
Yep.
Damages,
November
uh,
Damages.
yeah, Sons of Anarchy,
That one was fun.
Justified,
Ooh, Timothy Olyphant.
yeah, we've got Terriers,
Yeah, wasn't that when,
uh
like, they were, like, serving people? Like, that was their thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
one
Mhm.
season. A lot of people liked it, did not survive,
Didn't make
unfortunately.
it there. Mm-mm.
We got Lights Out,
Mhm.
I've never heard of that. The
Nope.
Americans, which was
Ah, that
well
was a
received.
popular one. Yeah, that one was
Yeah,
good. Mhm.
The Bridge,
Nope.
we have Tyrant, The
Nope.
Strain, The
Yay,
Bastard
vampires.
Execute yeah,
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Bastard Executioner,
which I
that
think there are
yeah.
people who spent longer, like, single sitting times on the toilet than that show lasted
Oh,
because
that's 'cause yeah, he
no one watched it.
realized, yeah, "I'm not gonna keep writing this if no one's going
I
to
was
watch
watching
it."
it. Yeah, yeah, like, it was the same guy who wrote Sons of Anarchy and now Mayans,
Yeah,
the sequel series to that. Yeah, like, ratings were shit, so he just like, "Nope, we're done."
yeah, yeah. Now a couple of these here, were well received, they just kind of
Mhm.
served out their time. So,
Oh, yeah.
really quickly, we've got The League, Louie, Wilfred, Anger Management, and Baskets, and it's not
And l
because they were poor quality,
mm,
they reached their
yeah.
logical end
And
before
did we
that.
say Legion in there?
Yeah, Legion was in
Yep,
there.
Legion.
Yeah,
Yep. Mhm.
yep, yeah. So, I guess the big thing is that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, officially after its 14th season, is the longest running American live action comedy series.
Uh-huh, which
Uh
that seems like you're just kind of stacking specificities on there to make it work. It's the longest running American live action comedy because, like, again, like, The Simpsons has been going on much longer. That's a comedy series.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, what's God knows what else is out there on, like, Eastern European TV that's been going since 1982 or something ridiculous.
Eh, you
Maybe
know
that Yololo guy is still going. He's
You know, I
still going "Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la" all the time.
oh, y
Whoa.
you know, the specificity for me really just lives within live action comedy series,
Mhm.
you know, because America's a big place. I mean, there
Yeah.
could be shows we don't even know about that,
Mm-mm.
you know, are playing in South America that could be going longer. But either way,
Mhm,
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, did not start off as It's Always Sunny in
mhm,
Philadelphia. It actually started off as original idea here from Rob McElhenney, who plays Mac on the show, and it was originally called It's Always Sunny on TV. Now, according to Glenn
mhm.
Howerton, who plays Dennis Reynolds in the show, he actually said that it was just originally called Jerks, which,
I mean, that fits, that checks.
yeah,
Yep, mhm.
yeah, yeah. You know, I think I'm happier with the It's Always Sunny moniker just because
Mhm,
it's, quite a bit more memorable. But,
yep.
Joe, have you ever seen any of the original pilot for this show?
Admittedly, no. Like, I have not seen the pilot because Danny DeVito wasn't in the pilot, was he?
Oh, he wasn't even attached at this point.
No,
Yeah.
no, I haven't seen any of the show pre Danny DeVito.
Well, there are some interesting things that we can introduce you to today. The original pilot for the show was actually just filmed on like handheld cameras. Okay, so
Mhm,
literally like your old family memories. These guys just they scrounged together some money. So this was the team of, as we mentioned, Rob McElhenney, Glenn Howerton, and Charlie Day. So they were all friends in some way or another because of meeting each other through the industry as actors.
mhm,
I think that Charlie and Rob actually met each other in New York at some point, filming a movie together, and then Glenn and uh, Rob met in LA.
mhm.
But regardless, by the time they actually got to creating the pilot for the show, they were all friends for good like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years.
Okay.
Um, and this kind of spun out of a writing exercise between the three of them because they were struggling actors, which
Mhm.
how many times have you heard that
I
before?
mean, I assume, like, most actors are struggling actors,
Yeah,
and that very few are actually like, "Yeah, this I can make a living out of."
yeah, yeah,
Mhm,
right? Yeah, I mean, that's what the original idea for the show, ended up being, right? And because of that, the content of the pilot took the same identity. They were all
mhm.
struggling actors trying to make it, and what they ended up doing was taking actors that they were working with at that point in time, and they put them right into the pilot, right? Um,
Okay.
w One of these people in the pilot you might recognize, Joe, okay?
Mhm.
Uh, are you familiar with Morena Baccarin by chance?
I mean, she would never have done, anything, like, notable. She never would have been on a beloved series about lovable space pirates that was canceled way too soon, or about a TV miniseries about an invading alien race, under the guise of friendship. She doesn't seem like the person who would be in any role like that, so I am unfamiliar with Morena.
Dude, she's in the pilot, okay? So they filmed a couple scenes for this pilot, and what they ended up adapting them from, was the Charlie Has Cancer episode of It's Always Sunny. This would appear in
Mhm,
season 1. So Rob's initial joke that he wrote out was this exchange between, like, Dennis and Charlie when he goes over to Charlie's apartment because he has to borrow a basketball,
mhm.
and Charlie's trying to break the news that he has cancer. Well, meanwhile, Dennis is just kinda like, "Hey, everyone's still in the car, and, I said I'd be right back. Can we talk about this later?" kinda thing.
Like, I know this is big news, but I kinda wanna get on with my day.
Yep. That would survive into season 1, and that's what made up the bulk of the pilot content. But where Marina Baccarin comes into the pilot, she actually ends up playing a pre-op individual who
Mhm,
has a very large penis within her pants, and the camera, makes note of this, okay?
mhm,
Very uh, there's not a whole lot of mystery as as to what you're seeing, I'll put it that
mhm.
way.
No.
This is one of the jokes in the series that a lot of folks have said, this didn't really age all that well,
Mm-mm.
um, but Morena plays this character, and she's only in the pilot for, maybe like a minute and a half. The exchange itself, though, is pretty damn funny, and it survives into season 1 as well.
Oh,
So
yeah, because I mean, it survives in season 1, and I think it's kind of almost like an ongoing thing because, again, other things that didn't age well is I think there's an episode called Mac Bangs a Tranny.
yeah,
Yep, and who do they have play his girlfriend in that? She's a more notable actress. I'm trying to like, it's bugging, like, Carmen I wanna say Carmen Electra, and I know that's wrong.
uh,
I know that's not it.
so Carmen actually ends up being the character's name in
In the series, that's what it was, yeah.
in the episode, but
Mhm.
Brittany Daniel is the actress who portrays
Okay.
her in the
Mhm.
show. So, Brittany Daniel takes on that role of Carmen. So yeah, that's probably where you recognize her from. Joder de
Yes.
Lum. Yeah. What's one quick footnote that's pretty funny though.
Mhm.
Uh, Glenn Howerton, oddly enough, would appear in Serenity, the film, based off of Firefly, and
Yep,
he
very
shows up right in the beginning.
yep, right at the beginning, it has, like, what, a line, maybe 2?
Yeah, yeah, he says, "Take me with you,
Yep,
please,
take her with you.
take me
So,
with
yep,
you."
that's yep, it's just 1 line, and then he gets shot.
Yeah,
Does
some of
not
his
deserve it, yeah.
some of his best
Mhm.
work, honestly. But really though, the pilot and this filmed right
Mhm,
around the same time. So it's interesting how, fate kinda brought them together. But yeah, the pilot itself though, I mean, just looking back, if I had seen this as like a short, as like a YouTube short or something
mhm,
that came out today, uh, I mean, honestly, it doesn't really look, the humor's there. Like
mhm.
it's still a very funny, piece of like TV history. But yeah, some of these jokes just weren't going to land
Yeah.
later on.
Mhm,
Hate to laugh about it, but hey, it's true. It's just how it is. But what was really good about it, Joe, even from like an early adaptation of this show,
mhm.
the breadcrumbs are already kind of there to make this feel like the selfishness and the self-absorbed nature that we would go to expect from the show, like long
Mhm.
term. So at least it was always there. It was always in the fabric, right? Um,
Yeah, speaking of, like, the show's fabric, like, that's definitely there. This is like, we've compared it to, like, Seinfeld a little bit in the fact that it's like, it's episodic. Like, you don't really have a lot of carrying over from episode to episode. You do have, like, I feel like there are either running gags or ongoing relationships with side characters where something that happened a season ago may come up this season when the characters return. Like, is it Rickety Cricket, and you see his descent into madness in that show as he interacts with the gang. So speaking of, I mean, again, that descent into madness is like a testament to like there's some dark humor going on
oh
with
yeah,
Always Sunny.
totally, totally. That's like the base of the show is just that
Hmm.
dark humor. And something about Rob McElhenney that a lot of folks have picked up on throughout the years. He's admitted that yeah, Seinfeld was a major influence on him. Um, and of course, that would kind of be the core focus of this show is that you have like initially four
Hmm.
friends that are making up the same balance that Seinfeld did, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so the pilot obviously focuses more on the three guys, right?
Hmm.
But there's a little bit of controversy in the pilot itself because, later on, of course, we'd have the character of Sweet D, who is, portrayed by Caitlin Olsen,
Hmm.
and she kills it. She's hilarious, and everybody loves her. But initially, the character of Sweet D was based on a character that, or based on a person that Rob McElhenney dated at one point in his life, who was also named Sweet D,
Hmm.
and she was portrayed by his then girlfriend Jordan Reed. So if you look at the pilot, you'll see a completely different character
Hmm.
who's saying a lot of the same things that D, does say in the pilot of the show or the first episode.
Hmm.
But yeah, they Jordan Reed unfortunately kind of got screwed in this whole process because
Oh.
yeah, she was there to help
Hmm.
create, she was there to help fund, and she was there to help kind of build the initial environment of It's Always Sunny.
Hmm.
Um, as soon as producers got involved, kind of fell apart for her and Rob.
Oh.
And as soon as they stopped dating, she basically was taken off the
Just taken off.
project.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah,
Okay. And is this
yeah.
any relation to Tara Reid?
No, I don't think so.
Throwing that okay,
No.
just wondering, like, there was a big name in the early 2000s who also Tara Reid more or less has disappeared from the limelight. Um, but yeah, just you never know.
Yeah,
It's because it's who you know in Hollywood from what I've been told, not always talent that gets you where you need to be. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, which also I feel like we've had several guests who've, or like at least one guest who's talked about how a relationship may have led to something weird or production related. Because wasn't that? No, no, no. I take that back because that was in Cannibal the Musical. How was it?
Yeah.
It's Matt Stone
It
who has makes a song about his ex girlfriend for that.
No, Trey Parker
Trey
was
Parker. Yeah.
yeah, he was dating someone that they just broke
Hmm.
up, like, just before they started filming it, and so he wrote an entire thing in the story about how his horse is supposed to mimic that girlfriend in that relationship. Um, honestly, looking at, like, at Rob McElhenney's, like, history, and
Hmm.
girlfriends, you can definitely tell that he has a you know, he definitely has attraction to blonde women,
Hmm.
and, I mean, Caitlin Olsen and Jordan Reed also fit the bill, and it sounds like this is what his ex-girlfriend looked like as well. So, he's always kinda
Yeah.
handed out for a sweet D.
Hey, he's got a type.
He's got he's got a type, and that's fine. We're not
Fine.
judging. We're not
No,
judging. We're
no,
in the
no.
trust tree in the nest, you know? Uh, but kind of a whirlwind though, dude. At the beginning of this show, the executive producers stepped in, or not the executive producers, that would actually be Rob, Glenn, and Charlie. But, a lot of changes were kinda made from FX Brass, right?
Hmm.
And one of the first things was like, "Hey, we don't need another show about actors. You gotta give us something else."
Yeah. That shit's
So,
been done. It's tired. No one's buying it. No one wants it.
yep,
Don't
don't
sell it.
don't wanna get it out of here. And honestly, Rob took the feedback, spun it around and said, "Okay, we're gonna be owners of a bar, and we're gonna be from Philadelphia because that's where I'm from, and I have a whole
Hmm.
bunch of stories we can base it off of." So, the rest is history, man.
Yeah. And
But
that
yeah,
works.
yeah,
'Cause, yeah,
yeah.
like, when we look at other things that they try to do in this show is a lot of schemes and a lot of plans that they do as, like, these, Philadelphia regular people owning a bar would wanna do to get rich, to eventually one day not have to work at the bar anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is where a lot of the fun of the show really, really comes from, is their attempts to get rich or their attempts to really do anything. Because sometimes money's not even involved at all. Because if you look at I know one of the first episodes I remember seeing was, I think it was Charlie and Mac fake their death.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a bit
And like
later. Yeah, that's a bit later in the
it's
series.
later, and like there's no money involved in that. I think that's a purely emotional thing. Like, oh, what would they do if we were actually dead?
Yeah.
And them carrying out the scheme it's just hilarious. Like there's just like them like, oh, it'll be a car crash. So they had to plan to like just crash a car into a wall and then jump out right before it hit the wall to look like, oh no, their car crashed. We can't find them. They must be dead.
Yeah.
And like they couldn't actually like get the car above like 2 miles an hour to hit the wall.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they ended up just setting the car on fire anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I
Mhm,
mean, this the so the we talk about the show's fabric, right? The
mhm,
big thing is this is, like, the extreme version of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or I would say 1 step forward and 2 steps back,
mhm,
because that's really what the whole point is, right? I mean, when we start thinking about Seinfeldian-like influences, the idea of Larry David saying, "I want these characters to learn nothing,"
mhm.
uh, that's really this is that extreme, right?
Very much. Like, I think if ever, like, there's a moment where it looks like they're about to learn something, they take an immediate turn away from that and try and not learn something
Oh, yeah,
actively throughout the show.
totally. They never learn. It's always
Mm-mm,
it's always about, how the characters are slighted by something, or,
mhm,
how they're trying to get ahead of something, and, um, and honestly, let's actually take a moment to pause, right? Because in season 1 of this show, these characters, as they should be, are totally different from what they would be the rest of the series, right?
mhm.
in season 1 of the show, yes, it's dark. Yes, the characters are kind of selfish. Uh, but one of the things about this show that a lot of people have kind of attached to is the stupidity of, Charlie's character, Charlie Day's
Mhm.
character. Uh, and he isn't actually that stupid in season 1. Like, he actually
Mhm.
hatches some schemes. Like, he actually does some things uh, that are definitely of low moral fiber, okay? So I wanna point that out
That's very
because
befitting.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, I just wanna point it out because, uh, all of these characters do surprisingly have journeys that they go on throughout the
Mhm.
series with, we talked about Glenn Howerton, who plays Dennis. Dennis starts off as just kind of vain, and it's standard pretty boy kinda stuff, but
Mhm.
he descends into madness throughout the show.
Oh, yeah, and, uh, just makes me think of, like, him, and the implication of having a woman alone on a boat.
Yes. The
That's
implications.
mhm. Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. He he definitely goes from one just horrible extreme to the next.
Mhm.
One episode, he actually starves himself on purpose because someone makes fun of his chin line looking like it's beginning to disappear, until he just completely passes out at the end of the episode. Um, you
Oh,
know,
mhm,
yeah, but, to discuss the rest of the cast again, because I know we talked
mhm,
about it a little bit in the pilot. So your main 4 characters are Mac, who's played by Rob McElhenney.
mhm.
Obviously, we talked about Dennis is Glenn Howerton. And then we've got Charlie, who plays himself. He
Charlie,
plays
yep,
Charlie.
mhm,
And then we talked about Caitlin Olsen, who plays, Sweet D.
mhm,
And
and then
Dennis
player
and
5
D.
enters the game. Oh,
Yes,
yep, we'll
yes.
get to not yet, we'll get to Dennis and D. Yep, mhm,
Yeah, yeah. Dennis and Dee are twins, right? Brother and
mhm,
sister. And so it does kind of add this interesting element because you would think that siblings, while they fight, they still would have each other's back. Doesn't always happen,
no,
but
mm-mm,
in
nope,
the early seasons, at least, they still kind of keep
mm, mhm,
they keep themselves in the same corner most of the time. But yeah, this first season of the show, it's it uses a lot of social issues.
mhm,
There's a lot of social issues that come up. So, things like abortion, they do that like right away in season 1. There's a lot of like racism based things that happen in season 1 itself.
mhm.
And as they navigate that first season, you can tell that it's definitely shock value for shock value, even though the jokes are really funny.
Mhm.
They are navigating the extremes on purpose to try and find an audience,
Well, I
right?
mean, that yeah, especially, I mean, of its time, think back to, like, the early 2000s, like, they were just I feel like a lot of, like, shows really trying the shock value thing. Like,
Oh, yeah.
what comes to mind, especially and thankfully died pretty quickly, was Mind of Mencia. Like, that was
Yeah.
completely all attempts at, like, shock value sketch humor, and then we found out when he was stealing jokes from Joe Rogan, he just got killed like, his show just got slammed and thankfully destroyed because it wasn't great to begin with. But I feel like that was kind of the thing, is that we wanted as a society to kind of see that, kind of like, like when you go to, any stand-up and how you're kind of expecting a little shock value, you're expecting the community to go a little too far because in that environment, it works. It's kind of okay. You go there with the understanding that if you're in like the first 2 rows, you are cannon fodder for whoever's on stage.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
could be for any reason. It could be your hair, what you're wearing, because you looked at your phone once. Could be anything. Like you're theirs to make fun of. And there are rarely any lines that can't be crossed.
Yeah.
Unless you're Michael Richards. You cross like that's a line. You
Oof.
sir, stand up won't save you there.
Yeah, I'm not touching
Um
that one.
no, no.
But
And so I think like kind of like this idea that we're giving more and more comedians their own shows is that we're trying to get that environment like out there that we can have that kind of like, habitual line stepping
oh, yeah.
happen on TV and see how far we can get with it. And this was a show where they did that, but it wasn't like an established like comedian doing sketch comedy with it. So it was just trying to do again something similar, but something more I was not more scripted. Obviously, even the sketch comedy things are scripted, but just a different format with sitcom as opposed to sketch.
Well, I think the important thing to mention here is one of the quotes from, like, the first reviews of season 1, in that it was smug enough to think it's breaking ground, but not smart enough to know it isn't. Which
That's pretty great.
which is less of an
Mhm,
indictment on the writing. I think it's more about people not really getting the point here because,
mhm,
yes, there's a lot of shock value involved in this show in the I mean, throughout, but I mean, especially as you mentioned in this time capsule of season 1,
mhm,
it's the reason why I don't think it's as offensive as it could be is because the characters themselves truly do not know that this is unacceptable behavior. You know, they are written to the point
mhm,
where you're thinking to yourself, "Yeah, if I was a person who had a conscience and actually understood social norms,
mhm. You wouldn't
they
do any
would
of these things.
they would be in prison." Yeah,
Mhm.
but these are people who truly do not understand. And so that's why I think, um, to me, I'm not gonna use the word endearing by any means, um, but to me, that's why I can kinda separate feeling notions of offense
Mhm.
and just recognizing, yeah, these people are just this bad. They just
Yep.
don't get it.
They're just this awful.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder because again, you obviously had started the show much earlier than I did. So a lot of shows will do like what you said, how like Charlie and Mac and Dennis and everyone, like definitely over time, like eased into their characters or really found like their foothold. Because like even like Parks and Rec, season one, you had Leslie Knope was basically Michael Scott,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
but female, and then she went from stupid to just obsessive as opposed to that. She was obsessed with making people happy, obsessed with doing her job well, and that's what made her character. So when we look at the characters here, we know, like we said, Dennis goes into Descend into Madness. Mac is always kind of physically obsessed with himself. And we look at Charlie's level of stupidity. I think it's encapsulated really well in one scene of the show where Danny DeVito's character, Frank, who we haven't brought up yet, we'll get to him a little more here, but he decides to make Charlie his protege. And to let you know just how bad Charlie's gotten between the start of the show and to this point, it's revealed that Charlie cannot read or write
Yeah. Yeah.
to save his life. So when Frank says that Charlie is his protege and he's told that he can't read or write, he's like, "Oh, he'll adapt. He'll
Yeah.
adapt to reading?"
Yes, it's true. Yeah, and honestly, it is a good point to bring up, Danny DeVito coming onto the show
Mhm,
because, yeah, you could kinda tell in season 1, while it was still funny, you know, it was still kinda gripping, um, they did their best to try and rope people in as, like, special guests, right? Because I mean,
mhm.
technically, they had frickin', Mr. Belding from Saved by the Bell in season 1. He plays a coach from their high school. Um, dude, even, Michael
Mhm.
Rosenbaum is in season 1
Oh,
of It's
no
Always
way.
Sunny. Yeah, yeah. They have a in the episode Gun Fever, it's episode
Mhm.
5 of season 1. He plays, Sweet Dee's boyfriend who is, secretly robbing all the bars in Philadelphia, and if you haven't seen
Mhm.
that episode in a while, 'cause you may just not even have realized it,
Mhm.
Michael Rosenbaum playing this character, made me belly laugh, when I went back in retrospect and watched it, 'cause
Mhm.
he kills it in this, dude. He is hilarious in the episode that he's in.
I believe it.
So
Like him, if you ever listen to him talk or ever know anything about him, like he will tell you that when he told all of his friends that he got Lex Luthor on Smallville, they're like, "Bullshit.
yeah.
Like, there's no way you're playing a villain. Like, it's impossible. You're hilarious. You're in honesty, kind of stupid."
Yeah.
But like he's not stupid. He's smart. But like his friends are like, "No, you don't fit that character. There's no way you'd be mean. There's no
Yeah.
way you could be a villain." So like him doing this, where I guess he's a villain because he's robbing all the bars in Philadelphia,
Oh,
but he's
dude.
hilarious doing it.
It'll always stick with me because when you first see his character,
Mhm.
he comes back to their bar, which he has just robbed, and they obviously don't know that.
Ew.
but he's like, "Hey, what's up, babe?" And Dee's like, "Oh, we're doing all right, but the Rob got barred." And he goes, "What happened? Are you kidding me?" And
Just
then,
lays it on super thick.
oh yeah, yeah, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry. It's a travesty. All right, let's go, babe." So, so if there's any Michael Rosenbaum fans that
Mhm.
listen to our program, go watch this episode. It's a very funny look in the first season. But despite this, though, yes, season one had major ratings problems, and so the bigwigs at FX, they came to Rob McElhenney again because he's kind of the de facto leader coming up with the
Mhm.
idea and the concept, and they go, "Yep, you're gonna need to bring a heavy hitter onto this show, someone who's got a little bit more star power." And this is where there's a couple different perspectives as to how this happened. Okay, obviously you've mentioned Danny DeVito a few times. He joined the show. He's
Yeah,
made
player
this.
5 enters the game.
Yes, yes, he's made this an absolute hit ever since he's been on it. But there's two different schools of thought on how he got onto the show. Uh, the one that I think is truly the actual reason. The president and GM of FX at the time, his name was John
Mhm.
Landgraf. There's stories that say that he talked to Rob and just said, "I'm friends with DeVito. He's going to be on the show."
There's no getting around it. You get Danny DeVito. In which case, who would be mad about that?
I Well, hey,
You'd be
dude,
like, "I'm stuck with Danny DeVito? Oh, fuck. That's
Rob
fantastic."
Rob actually fought this.
Really?
He said, This is going to probably ruin the fabric of the show."
Mhm.
And he kind of had that effect, like um, how Ramis didn't want to work with like Tim Allen, right?
Yeah,
And then in
mhm.
high he's like, "Yeah, okay, actually,
Yeah, I should be
this is a
working
really
now.
this is a
Yeah,
really good
mhm.
idea." Yeah. But either way, Landgraf's his opinion was followed and validated. But the other idea was that DeVito's kids saw season one,
Mhm.
really liked it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll take a shot. I'll give it a chance." So either way, him becoming part of this show, that that was a major like influence on me sticking with it. Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, I think a line from Frank encapsulates this perfectly with the character. If you had to capture him with one line, it is, "I've only got a few good years left, so I'm gonna get real weird with it."
Might as
And that's
well.
Frank.
Yep, yep. It and really when you think about it, man, if you watch season 1 again, like, when I looked at some of the core elements of season 1, I thought that they had a good, like, cast of characters outside of what Frank would initially end up being in season 2.
Mhm.
'Cause you had Artemis, Dee's friend who,
Yep.
gets her asshole bleached and and talks about it loudly in clubs,
Mhm.
and she was hilarious. She actually licks Dennis's face, uh, she's trying to audition as a bartender, um, so she's really funny,
Mhm.
and then you have the
Oh, the
McPoyle twins.
McPoyles. Oh my god, yeah. Their
Yeah,
weird obsession with drinking milk.
it's not a weird obsession, Joe, you need your calcium, okay? But yeah, they show up right away, at near the end
Mhm.
of season 1, and honestly, tho those characters are just they're the incestuous, strange, former classmates of the main characters,
Mhm.
and, always weird, like,
Yep. Every
just always
time you
awkward.
think they can't be more weird, every
They
episode they're on, they crank it up. They
they
find a way.
They do. They trump you every time. Yeah, so you've got Jimmy Simpson, who would later go on to star in Westworld, and Nate Mooney, who is
Mhm.
so they play brothers Liam and Ryan McPoyle, who are just absolutely strange. Apparently they shower together, and apparently they huff a lot of pledge, which, hey, whatever. That's how they got there.
Yep.
Um, but
If you like the
also,
scent of lemon and freshness, that's you.
dude, also in season 1, you have Charlie's Uncle Jack who appears, who's played by, Andrew Friedman, who is the creepy Uncle Jack is
Mhm.
it's his weirdness is on full display in season 1, and later, he would fully cement just how strange he was. And then you have Lynn Marie Stewart, who played Charlie's mom as well. She would
Mhm.
be integral to a lot of weird shit that would happen later on. as as we mentioned with Danny DeVito, believe it or not, they wrote in a an abortion that didn't quite take, apparently, bet- between Frank
Oh
and
god.
Charlie's mom. So, oh yeah. So yeah, all that stuff was there. They had it in the
Mhm.
beginning, like these characters and just their strangeness. Like the DNA was good. Like they
Mhm.
had a really good starting point to kind of build on. And when you look at the ratings specifically for this show,
Mhm.
um, it's it's plain as day. Like season one, really surprised it didn't get canceled.
Mhm.
But as you go throughout the series, as soon as Danny DeVito's attached, boom, people are showing up, right?
Yeah.
Um, and pretty much from that point on, like the aggregate scores and everything, they support that yes, like this is a winning combination,
Mhm.
and really the scores per season from that point excel quite a bit, really up until now. Like some of the recent seasons have dipped a little, but
Oh,
overall, people are happy with it.
well, again, like, I feel like, those early season woes, like, every show goes through that. Like, I don't know of too many shows that were just, like, instant hit. Like, boom, just worked right away. Like, I mean, there definitely some out there. But, like, even shows that we love, like Star Trek Next Generation, that took, I think, what,
It's like
3
3,
seasons
yeah.
to really find its footing and really do well. And then with Seinfeld, same thing. It wasn't until, like, what, season 4 that, like, the show really took off?
5 actually,
5,
season
yeah.
5,
Mhm,
yeah. Yeah, before that, it was just like, I don't wanna
it
watch New York people be New York people.
mhm. So, it's just kinda what happens, and then also, again, like, your show goes on for 15, 16 seasons, you're gonna have dips here in the writing. It's just what it is. Because at that point where you're doing the same characters for that long, like, obviously, there's, like, an infinite number of things to do because it's life and there's so much out there, but from a writing standpoint, like, I have to imagine, like, it's gotta feel like at some point you've had the characters do just about everything, so what's next? So you can't help but, like, have a few whiffs here and there where, like, an episode just doesn't land, or sometimes like, half a season isn't all that great.
Which, some people have said that about It's Always Sunny, that you're
Mhm,
obviously gonna have high points and low points in each season, and which is true. There are
mhm,
some episodes that didn't really land for me at all. I would say that what really, like, won me over as a fan was that the more that you watch this show, the more you realize that a lot of it's pulled from Rob McElhenney's actual experiences and, like, people who he grew up with in Philadelphia. Because the McPoyles are based on real people, like, just
mhm,
really strange classmates of his. Uh, we've already talked about how Sweet D mimics a person that he dated.
mhm.
His real life, like, childhood home appears in an episode of the show.
Ah, no way.
Yeah, uh, oddly enough, it's right next door to his, like, aunt and uncle, whose house is actually
Mhm.
featured on the show.
His dad
Um,
didn't go to prison because of him, did he?
I don't think so.
Because if that
But
was pulled from real life, it's like, "Oh god, Rob,
dude, I don't
things
know.
got dark there for you, like IRL."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know about that story, but I do know that Green Man was based on a friend of his who used to wear, like, a full-on spandex
Mhm,
green bodysuit to sporting events, and, they actually paid him off to have rights to that character. So
mhm, which, good for them because, like, okay, so I guess if we look at, like, some real pivotal episodes of this show, which I don't know if that's where we're doing with this, Green Man is one of them,
Oh,
because it's
yeah.
just one of those gags where, again, it's a scheme where, I think it's Charlie and Dee think they're gonna make some sort of, I think, like, viral video or something. They wanna be, like, internet famous, so they have Dee be this fake reporter at a sporting event, and she's supposed to talk to someone, and then Charlie pops up in this full green head to toe suit, all green, and, like, slaps or hits the guy that she's talking to. Except the first guy she says something to is like a mountain of a man, and he's huge and muscular. So Charlie pops in to hit him, and then the last second, out of complete fear, changes his mind and, like, throws the ball and hits D in the face instead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, well, that's
Mhm.
technically, that's not even the first appearance of Green Man. Uh, Green Man appears in The Gang Gets Invincible, which
Oh, shit. Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that's season 3. I wanna say it's season 3,
Okay.
maybe yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 3, where, Mac and Dennis want to do tryouts for the Philadelphia Eagles because
Mhm.
they're inspired by, Mark Wahlberg's Invincible movie,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And so that's where that starts. They go to, try out for the Eagles, which well, I'll explain a little bit more of this later.
Mhm.
Um, but they go to try out for the Eagles, and Charlie just wants to go to hang out and just chill while he's there.
Mhm.
But a series of events occurs to where he can't chill at all, and it leads to Frank dosing him, uh, with, uh with acid. He just puts acid in his beer,
Oh my
and
god.
he's like, That's what the bits of paper were in my beer? I drank all that." And so in this haze,
Mhm.
like, in the beginning, they mention Green Man a little bit, and then after Charlie is, like, drug induced, suddenly he's Green Man just dancing around and doing his
Mhm.
thing.
Oh
Um,
god. So wait, then in the second Green Man episode, is that when they have Riot Punch?
no, Riot
Or was that
Punch
a different
is
one?
later. Yeah,
Okay.
Riot Punch is later. But Green yeah, that was the first appearance of Green Man, and then,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, when they're trying to get ahead and make, like, a viral video, he
Mhm.
dons the suit again. Um But yeah, honestly, like I said,
Mhm.
season 3 for me, that's when a lot of my loyalty began because there's a really funny episode with, the gang dances their asses off where we talked about, uh, Charlie's, uh, inability to read, how
Mhm.
he's illiterate. Well, it bites him in the ass specifically here because he's filling out this form where he thought that they were, winning something for the bar, but really Charlie was accidentally putting the bar up as a reward for a dance contest. So if you won the contest, you'd win the bar.
But oh god.
Yeah,
That
it's a
sounds like
little
Charlie. Yep. Mhm.
oh yeah, and it's a hilarious episode. Like here's the thing, like we'll mention some episodes and some things that you might know
Mhm.
just because of how pop culture works, right? But overall, the recommendation is going to be if we say something, just go check it out.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no point in giving away these jokes. Like, just go watch them. But another really big like season 3 point for me was Mac is a serial killer, and that's the one where he's dating Carmen again, but he's sneaking
Mhm.
around everybody to make it seem like he's not.
Mhm.
And yeah, that the Mac is a serial killer episode doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, I could always watch that episode over and over again. It's just that damn funny.
Mhm.
Um,
So a
yeah.
character like a side character that we haven't brought up yet that I think is pivotal to the show because of her relation she doesn't have a relationship with Charlie, but Charlie thinks he has a relationship with her is the waitress.
Oh, yes.
Who in real life isn't she married to Dennis?
No, in real life, the waitress and Charlie are married.
Okay, for some reason I
Yeah.
always thought it was her and Dennis were married. Um, so in the show, Charlie is basically stalking this woman and is always trying to like find his way into a relationship with her. And I think where we get I'd never say it culminates, it never reaches a zenith, but I think it reaches a point where in both of their minds, they're finally gonna get what they want in season 5, where we have the day man. Or is it no, is it the night man cometh?
And yeah, the night man
The
cometh.
night man
Yeah.
cometh, where this is one, you've definitely if you have if you haven't seen the show, you've probably heard references to Dayman. It actually it comes in two forms because at one point there's an episode where Charlie and Dennis are hanging out and they're trying to write a hit song and they're
Yeah, that's
huffing spray paint
which is in season 3.
in
Yeah.
season 3, yeah.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
come up with the Dayman song. Like, Dayman, oh,
Yes.
fight of the night man. And they have this little song, they perform it, and they are it's bad hilarious is
Oh,
what you
yeah.
end up seeing in that episode. And it comes back around in season 5 where it turns out Charlie has written a play around the song.
Yes. And of
And
course, with the the desperate need to be recognized and the self-absorbed nature of the
Mhm.
characters, because Dee is, of course, she maintains being a failed actress on the show.
Yes.
They all kind of bite and want to be a part of it just because,
Mhm.
yeah, they're that they're that ridiculous.
They are, and they all like this all like resonates in some way, shape, or form. You've got Dee just I think wanting more stage time and wanting to really emphasize her solos and her singing. And she's awkwardly supposed to be going out with the day man, or there's a love interest with the day man, who is Dennis, her brother. So
There's a
they're
little
not
boy.
comfortable with that. A little boy
Yeah, tiny
who
boy.
tiny boy.
It's rough because, a as we'll disclose this one a
Mhm,
little bit because, it's pretty clear that the lyrics of Nightman and Dayman, relate to some trauma in Charlie's childhood, which we don't
mhm.
wanna laugh about, but, um,
I mean, they
eh
kinda make it funny. They make it really
oh, they
funny.
make it incredibly funny. Yeah, and that's the whole
Mhm,
point, but, to kinda come full circle to what you mentioned, though,
mhm,
it is interesting that Rob McElhenney and, uh, he ends up meeting his future wife,
mhm,
on this show, and it's funny how you've got different people who are kinda hooking up behind the scenes here, right? So, Rob McElhenney, Caitlin Olsen, they're actually married in real
mhm.
life. Charlie Day and, Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who plays the waitress, they're also married in real life. They met before the show and were married before the show.
Mhm. Danny
Um
DeVito and Dennis married in real life. It all just sort of
uh,
happens.
Dennis, oddly enough, he's actually married to the actress that, he's basically stringing along in the Dennis System episode.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
Yeah, so, like, in one way or another, like, all the main characters and their spouses are all involved in the show. So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so, I guess for me, dude, like, we could try to go season for
Oh
season
god,
here,
yeah. Mhm.
but keep in mind, there's 15 seasons of this show now, and
Yes, we would still be recording into, 15 years from now if we go season to season, episode to episode.
yeah. Oh, yeah, we totally would. But I think the big things here to point out is it's honestly similar to what we talked about with Seinfeld, and I don't
Mhm.
want to use Seinfeld as, like, saying it's, like, completely derivative, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, there are some similarities, but
Mhm.
it's very clear that these shows had completely different paths after a while. Um, and I think that obviously not learning from any lessons is a big part of it, which
Mhm.
once again, we could say it's similar to Seinfeld, but uh, you have to say that intelligence probably plays a bigger role in that as opposed to, uh, yeah, the self-absorbed nature of
Mhm.
Seinfeld's characters. Because the people in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like, the intelligence does not stay consistent
Mm-mm.
for any of them at all. Now, Charlie, we've mentioned, he gets progressively dumber throughout the series,
Very. Yep. Mhm.
but they all kind of end up, you know, being on the same level after a while in terms of depravity and,
Mhm.
and the self-centered nature of things.
Yeah, and I would say at least like in Seinfeld, like I said, like they're all of them are self-absorbed and really they all like at the heart of it, they're all bad people. Um,
Yeah.
but at least in Seinfeld, they all think they're good people. They try and
Yeah.
like justify what they do and like they all in all they think they're good in what they're doing. Whereas I think deep down in It's Always Sunny, I would say less than half of them think they're good people.
Yeah,
I think
I
they're
mean,
all fully aware of who they are in the show.
oh, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
there's usually never a character on It's Always Sunny who doesn't feel slighted by something.
That's true.
But
Mhm.
intelligence never plays a part in usually what
Mm-mm.
goes on. But I think the stuff to really watch for, though, because we once again, we're not here to be like, this is your spoiler, your spoiler show.
Mm-mm.
What we do want to do is kind of give you an idea of what happens to these characters over time. Because right away in the beginning of the show, we've talked about this already with Dennis being probably the most self-absorbed out of the characters in terms of
Easily.
vanity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that takes him to escalatingly, like, just horrible things throughout the show, with his body image, with how he treats women, his substance abuse issues, like, everything just becomes, like, untethered to a point where he's physically, like, seeing things that aren't actually happening. And there's a really
Mhm,
funny episode that has cameos from 2 people that I will not mention because it's too goddamn funny,
mhm.
uh, to say out loud. Um, I don't know if you remember this episode, Joe, but
Mhm,
he basically it's called Dennis Reynolds: An Erotic Life, and he basically
mhm.
keeps memoirs of all of his sexual exploits,
Yep.
and, it basically it leads to him, passing out in front of a clinic, a health clinic.
Mhm,
Yeah, so that's one example of, like, just the characters and their escalating journeys throughout this. Um, with Mac, with Rob McElhenney's character, Rob, actually comes from a family where 2 of his brothers are gay,
mhm.
and so he makes references to this on the show too with, like, family members on the show. I think 2 of his cousins are gay on the show. And there's a lot of things that he builds into his character that also shows, like, a journey of coming out and
Mhm.
figuring out, like, his identity, and he's like this is one of those things in the show that actually ends up being, like, poetic and not just a sight gag. Like, he comes out over time in different ways,
Mhm.
and that becomes, like, his character's journey outside of some of the self-absorbed things we've talked about, so that's something to kinda watch out for with Rob and
Mhm.
or the character of Mac, whose full name is actually Ronald McDonald, by the way. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, and otherwise, with Charlie, like we mentioned, his character, um, it has always been, like, just perplexing to me
Mhm.
because, yeah, like we talked in the beginning, he's not the dumbest person in the crew in the beginning, but he clearly is, like, the whole
Evolves
rest of
into
the
that,
way.
yeah, or
Yeah,
devolves into that, I wanna say, probably not evolves into that.
yeah,
Mhm.
but he displays, like, there are clearly things that he brings up that indicate there's some intelligence living in there because you end up finding out that he's actually a really good musician,
Mhm.
even though he shouldn't have, any talents towards that.
No.
Yeah. And and
And
and kitten mittens. He designed kitten mittens,
he
man.
did. He had a hit product on his hands there, and he may be a full-on rapist, but that
Yes,
yes,
it's true.
and enjoys a good milk steak with a side of
Yes.
jelly beans.
And let's not forget the grilled Charlie, because for some reason, Charlie and food just go together.
Mhm.
Now, you remember my friend Ron from college, right?
Oh,
We've talked
yeah.
about Ron. You've met
Mhm.
Ron. Well, Ron and I actually one weekend in college decided to make the grilled Charlie, in
Oh.
in his apartment. Now, Joe, do you remember what the
Mhm.
grilled Charlie was?
Not offhand.
Oh, man. So, as we talked about Frank Reynolds, played by Danny
Mhm.
DeVito, him and Charlie eventually end up moving in together, because, Frank Reynolds has, lived this posh life. He's
Mhm.
made a lot of money, and he's realized just how unfulfilling that life was. And so to try to figure out how to, gain some of that back, he sees the youthfulness of the gang
Mhm.
as being a way to do that, and his pathway is through Charlie, right? So the grilled Charlie is something that he gets introduced to while he's living with Charlie, and there's just to explain this sandwich, Joe. You got 2 slices of bread.
Okay.
You've got cheese on one side.
Okay.
So I think the cheese is on the inside,
Still standard. Let's go yep. Keep going.
peanut butter on the outside,
Okay.
and then the other side has chocolate syrup on the outside
Oh, boy.
and butter on the inside,
Oh.
and then you slap that on the pan.
Oh god. Ron ate that?
Uh,
You ate that?
I was gonna say Ron didn't just eat it, both of us ate it, and I'm
Oh
pretty sure both
god.
of us went back for a second, so,
Oh,
yeah,
Jesus.
it's actually pretty tasty.
I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like one of those flavor combinations that shouldn't work, kinda like sour cream and Oreos.
I still will not try that, by the way.
You try it.
Yeah,
Fucking try it. Holy shit, it brings the chocolate out like it shouldn't. I don't understand how it does, but it does.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, well,
Mhm.
rounding out, like so, talking about, Danny DeVito's character, like,
Mhm.
his journey from, like, pseudo respected businessman and then kind of devolving into this, you know,
Really weird individual.
yes, really strange. That actually does explain how a lot
Mhm,
of his character development kind of goes.
mhm.
Um, and one other parallel to Seinfeld that I will mention, like Sweet D does start off as a character who seemingly does have more of a conscience than the rest of the group does.
The rest of the gang, yep, mhm,
Yeah, but just like Elaine in Seinfeld, she does become a lot like the rest of the crew,
mhm.
and and it was because she asked for it. She said, like,
Oh.
I don't wanna continue." Like, Caitlin Olsen said, "I don't wanna continue being, you know, this character.
Mhm.
Let me become like the rest of these guys." And it paid off.
Mhm,
She's hilarious as Sweet D, and it's
mhm.
because of the fact that, yeah, she completely turns a corner after season 2, and she's up to the same horrible antics that the rest of them are. Like, in the beginning, she's doing things like, pretending to be crippled to gain pity from people, and it only gets worse from there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, like,
so
isn't there a point where, like, they try moving, and they try driving somewhere, and they need to pool money for something, and Dee has enough money to, like, do her share, and they just need, like, $200, and the other 3 characters didn't have it, and she's like, "How the hell do 3 grown ass men not have $200 between them?"
which is, that's an episode where, uh, this sound equipment falls at the back of a truck,
Mhm,
and Charlie and Dee find the stereo equipment,
mhm.
and it ends up having drugs in it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's the gang gets whacked, where they meet, they meet actual mobsters, and
Mhm.
yes, that's a two-part episode. It's also very, very funny. Um, see, and the thing is, like, you if you give away too much, like,
Mhm.
these episodes, if somebody explained each one of these to me, I'd be pissed off because, the I mean, it's just too damn funny to have
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
walk you through it. It really is. Um, and yeah, I'm actually thinking of a very specific moment right now, which features another really great cameo,
Mhm.
and there's an exchange between him and Dennis where, like, Dennis's face just there's it changes in a way that, like, a comedic actor, you would never expect him to be able to do. So yeah, like, there's just a lot of stuff throughout this show's history that I think no matter at what point you jump on, you'll be able to find, pretty damn funny.
Mhm.
And if you don't find stuff funny, you'll at least respect, I think, what they can do because, there's an episode in season 10 called Charlie Work where they
Mhm.
have, and it's also one of the highest rated episodes of this whole series,
Okay.
where they do a 7-minute uninterrupted shot in the bar. And the whole point of this episode is to show how Charlie actually knows how to run the bar in ways that work for him, that has kept it successful that none of the other people knew about, right? And, this 7-minute, like, uninterrupted shot is really impressive, I would say, for just any show, but to see them pull it off was really, really impressive.
Mhm.
So we're not just talking about shock value,
Mhm.
well-delivered jokes and strong acting, aside from strong writing, but the execution of the things that they're doing, you can tell, like, these are people who, are truly dedicated to making, like, a solid program.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it takes different
Okay.
forms,
Yeah.
whichever season you're in.
Okay, so if we since we are talking Seinfeld, and hell, there's even an episode where they do a Seinfeld homage where they
Yes.
reenact, a scene from, is The Wager or The Bet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the red shirt.
Yep,
Yeah.
the red shirt, and when we did the Seinfeld episode, we even said, like, if you wanted a launching off point, if you had to give a favorite episode or a good place to start, so and not like a start watching here and keep going forward, but, like, if you wanted a good taste of the show, like, this is a good example of what the characters are and what you can expect if you were to keep watching and even go back and watch and go forward to the point. What episode would you recommend people to go off of?
I for me, I don't think
one episode is truly enough.
Mhm.
I so when I've talked about the jumping off point for people, I've always said start with season 3.
Mhm.
And that's because of some of the episodes that I've mentioned, like the gang gets invincible is absolutely hilarious. There's an episode where the gang is gets held hostage, and that's an episode with the McPoyles that to this day is one of my favorite ones of the entire series. It is
Mhm.
just so strange. It is so weird, but it's really it even has a Die Hard reference that is a really deep-seated one. Uh, yeah,
Mhm.
and I mean, I just there's a ton of other really good ones in here. When we talk about schemes and, like, trying to get ahead and getting clout, there's one called Frank Set Sweet D on Fire, and this whole episode is just them trying to, like, get, like, viral videos and get noticed.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously, Mac is a serial killer comes from that season too.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
and actually, yeah, The Gang Gets Whacked is also in season
That's
3.
season 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um,
my
mm.
one of my favorite ones for a good jumping off point too is also season 3, and that's, bums making a mess all over the city.
Oh, yes.
Where, like, I guess, like, all the characters are doing their own thing in this. You've got not all of them doing their own thing, like, they kind of break off into groups. So you've got, Dennis and Frank somehow get a hold of an old retired squad car, and then they
Yes.
just, like, get, like, rented, like, police uniforms from, like an acting thing, and they go around basically, all they try doing with it is getting free food from hot dog stands
Yes. They
because they
sure
just
do.
give them to cops. And then you've got, basically Mac and D, like, forming, like, a local militia
Yes.
to clean up all the crime around there because that's what's really gonna do it. It's not gonna be the police. And
Yes.
then Charlie has this weird, like, he thinks everyone is trying to play a character, so he wants to be Serpico.
He just wants to be Serpico.
Just
He
wants
just
to be
wants to be
Serpico.
just wants to dress up as Al Pacino because
Yep.
everybody else is doing the cop thing, so he's just letting yeah, just wants to play Serpico.
Oh my god, and his the ending part in front of City Hall gets me every fucking time.
Oh, yes.
How about
Mr. Ma
how do you like this Spin Doctus mix?
Mr. Mayor, which is spelled M-A-R-E.
Yep,
Yeah,
again, showing that Charlie just not smart. Oh god.
and seriously, like,
Mhm.
that's
Season
why
3. Mhm.
season 3 for me is like, yeah, if you wanna truly get, like, a great snapshot of the series, like, start there. It's absolutely hilarious, and there are so many great side characters that we haven't even talked about yet, which frankly, I think it's better for you to just experience it if you're brand new to the series and have never
Mhm.
watched it. It's not even worth us getting into them.
Mm-mm.
Like the side characters in this show are are really well fleshed out. There are people who appear in the early seasons that come back. So yeah, it's definitely worth the experience all those together. But when we talk about strong writing, one other thing I'll mention to this joke, 'cause I know we're getting kind of long in the tooth here. You mentioned Rickety Cricket, right?
Mhm.
Who is played by David Hornsby, and uh, his character is memorable because he kind of proves how people who come into contact with the gang,
Mhm.
they usually don't leave better people.
No. No, they do
And
not.
yeah, and his character is a testament to that fact because horrible things happen to Rickety Cricket.
Very, very bad things happen to Rickety Cricket.
Yes, yes, and his character, some of the worst things happen to him early in the history of the series, so you don't have to wait long to really see that, so I guess if you wanna have something else to kinda watch out for, definitely do it there because David Hornsby is a tremendously talented writer, and you'll see his name pop up in a lot of the written by credits, throughout the series history too.
Mhm.
So, usually if I know if there's an episode written by him, it's one to keep your eyes glued to, but yeah, yeah, dude, it's a
Yeah.
great series that surprisingly has managed to stay, you know, in terms of writing and quality.
Mhm.
There's always gonna be a couple episodes in a season where you just might be like, "Yep, I'm gonna take this
Yeah.
one off."
Mhm.
But just because that happens, it doesn't mean that there's not gonna be, like, a tremendously, ridiculously,
Yeah.
well put, like, high point in that same season.
Mhm. So, I mean, really, if you're looking at, like, a time of, like, starting to watch this, because I know, like, I don't know if you're like me, like, I can sometimes feel overwhelmed with the amount of media to consume that's out there and, like, knowing, like, where to start. Like, you hear, like, so many good shows are going on. You should watch this. You should watch this. I'm like, nah, I think I'm going to watch Seinfeld for the 15th time through because
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. I'm really only good with 5 shows, that's all I need. If you have like a massive list of things you wanna pay attention to, you know what? When you're working on something else, throw It's Always Sunny on in the background. Make sure
Yeah.
it's not something where you, like, maybe have to have some sort of communication going on with someone because something's gonna slip out that they probably shouldn't hear. Especially like we said, not all the show's been going on for over a decade. A lot of the jokes are, off maybe not off-putting, but definitely don't land like they used to back in the early 2000s. But, start with season 3, put it on while you're doing something else, and I guarantee you that there's something's gonna happen enough where you're gonna look up from what you're doing, maybe even go back a little bit, watch it from where you couldn't believe you just heard, and you're gonna laugh. And I think maybe that's one of the best ways to start the show is, have it on while you're trying to do something else, and then you'll fall in love with it while you're trying to work on other things.
Well, really what I think if someone needs an episode, like you kind of mentioned a moment ago, like,
Mhm,
is there one episode that we really want to pinpoint? I will amend that statement. There's a very specific episode that I have shown people that that is absolutely essential viewing. Okay,
mhm.
so I will amend this. In season 9, there's an episode called "Flowers for Charlie,"
Okay,
and it's written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, so the creative team behind Game of Thrones.
alright.
They were really big fans of the show, and vice versa. So
Mhm.
they came together and they wrote this show, this episode, and it is an episode where a scientist tries to prove whether or not he can increase someone's intelligence, just truly with science. Of course, Charlie ends up being that person. And yes,
Yep. Perfect candidate.
with yes,
Mhm,
without going any further than that, if you're if you're in Joe's seat and you're one of
mhm,
those people that says, "You have suggested I watch this, therefore fuck you,"
mhm.
this is the episode to break
That's the winner.
through.
Mhm.
Yeah, to break through that. I really do think that for sure. So,
Alright, then I think this is a good place to stop for the episode. So we've given you your suggestions, we've gone over roughly what to expect from the characters, and their general personalities of these are bad people, but you're probably going to stick around to see what they do next because they're all their own type of crazy. So, on that note, definitely highly recommend watching the series. There's going to be something there in its 15 season library that's gonna tickle your fancy that you're going to enjoy. So we've given you some episodes too, and I think it's time that we say goodbye and good night. And until next time, keep on dissecting.